Did you know that there's just one simple trick to becoming a fluent English speaker? Just one thing you must change about the way you learn to have your words come out naturally and automatically, without hesitation, as if English were your first language every time you speak. Express your exact thoughts spontaneously, continuously, and in detail, without being forced to change what you want to say, or only speak in simple sentences because you can't find the right words. Understand everything you hear in English movies, TV shows, music, and conversations, and finally speak confidently, without ever feeling nervous or worried about mistakes, with the smooth pronunciation of a native speaker. And best of all, this one easy change in the way you learn will help you experience immediate improvement in your spoken English, so you'll finally be certain that you're learning the right way. But before I reveal this trick, I'd like you to know why so many English learners have problems with their English and struggle to become fluent speakers. Why do so many English learners often use words that sound unnatural in conversations? What's the reason they often have to think about what grammar rules to use before speaking? What stops them from speaking smoothly and clearly? The answer to all of these questions is, in 3 words, how they learn. You see, traditional language learning methods only give English learners part of the fluency puzzle. Lessons teach them grammar rules, but not how to use grammar without thinking when they speak. Students learn English through their own language, so they're trained to hesitate and translate in their heads during conversations. They learn to read and write the formal English of textbooks, but get very little training listening to and speaking casual, conversational, spoken English. So what is the one simple trick to becoming a successful English speaker? It's to learn English like native speakers. Fluency is nothing more than a collection of habits, like using grammar without thinking or pronouncing words correctly. So all you need to do to develop the same habits native speakers have is to learn the same way native speakers learn. When you learn like native English speakers, you master grammar automatically, without grammar tables and boring drills, through visual examples and stories. Building fluency like a native speaker means you also learn slang, idioms, phrasal verbs, and other conversational spoken English expressions, in addition to what's appropriate for writing. Learning English the native way means you learn to speak fluent English naturally, actually practicing with native English speakers and building speaking confidence in the real world. When you learn this way, it's easy, fun, fast, and doesn't feel like studying at all, just like how you learned your own native language. Now that you know you must change the way you learn if you want to get fluent, because the traditional methods you've been using until now have not helped you become a confident speaker, how can you start developing the habits of a native English speaker so you can start speaking fluent English confidently? You can begin right now, in this video, by developing one of the most important fluency habits, understanding and using conversational English words and phrases automatically, with a simple vocabulary lesson that will help you learn and properly pronounce the real English words and phrases native speakers actually use when speaking. Here we go. Hello there, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this month's Phrase Builder and Pronunciation Practice lesson. In this month, since we're talking about food and diets and being healthy, we're going to talk about some more advanced level vocabulary for talking about food. Now before we get into that though, just a quick word, one quick explanation about the word diet. Now people use this to talk about being on a diet where you're maybe eating a certain kind of food to lose weight or to get a better body or something like that. But the word diet in general just means the food that you eat. So you can have an unhealthy diet where maybe you eat fast food all the time, or you can have a healthy diet where you eat lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and good meats or something like that. But again, to be on a diet, specifically in the kind of regular casual form of the word, it just means that you're eating a specific thing with the purpose of losing weight. But a diet really in general just means whatever kind of food you're eating. So let's say panda bears or pandas have a diet of bamboo. So panda bears eat, or pandas eat bamboo. That's what they eat. Or goldfish have a diet of little fish flakes or whatever they eat. So basically, anything that just has a diet, to be having a diet just means the kind of food that you're eating. So there's 2 senses of the word. One is just the kind of food that you're eating, and the other is the specific casual way of talking about diet. To say that I'm on a diet means that I'm eating a certain kind of food so that I can lose weight. Well, now that we've gotten past that, we can go into our advanced phrases, and then after that we'll talk about a few other interesting casual things that come up in the conversation that will help you sound more native. Let's get started. Our first word is ingest. 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 To ingest food means to eat food. So a young child might use the word I want to eat something, but a scientist might talk about ingesting food. So if you're having a stomach ache and you go to the hospital, maybe the doctor could say like, well, did you ingest something weird? Did you ingest some bad medicine, or did you ingest some old food? Now, this is, again, it's a situation where maybe a scientist would be using it, or especially if you are, someone that's like a medical person, you are a doctor, or you have academic work in food, that kind of thing, then ingest is a word that would come up regularly. It doesn't come up in regular conversations so often, but again, it's something I want to be teaching in this lesson because you will hear it, and especially you'll hear it in the conversation this month, so really be listening for words like this. Ingest. I had trouble ingesting some food because I broke my jaw, so I couldn't ingest anything. Ingest. Ingest. And connected with this word is to digest. Digest something. So when you digest something, there is the physical digestion, which you take food and then break it down into pieces so that your body can use the nutrients of that food. And there's also to digest information. If you've been a member of Master English Conversation for more than a few months, you'll probably remember I believe it was the lesson with my sister, I believe, and we were talking about journalism and society and talking about being able to digest information. So being able to take information and actually use that in a productive way, just like your body digests food. Next, edible. Now this is actually a word that came up in last month's lesson set about plants and gardening. To be edible is just a, again, more advanced sounding word for can you eat something? So edible, just like doable or watchable or, legible. So legible means like if you have writing that's something that could be read, it's easy to read. So edible, we're taking eat, and able, like being able to do something and putting it together. Edible, edible. So sometimes I go walking in the woods around my home and I look for edible plants. Edible plants, or I'm looking for, maybe some edible mushrooms or some edible bamboo shoots. These are the little young bamboo pieces that are coming out, the young seeds that are growing. So anytime you're looking for something edible, it just means you can eat it. Edible. I hope you go out and be careful when you look for things, because maybe some things are not edible. They are inedible. 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 Now here's something that's a quick side note, and a side note just means we're going to take our regular information like the lesson here and then just add some little piece of information that's also important. When you're learning about things like this, especially more advanced vocabulary, the best way to learn this is to learn the pieces of these individual words, because what we're really doing is taking a word like inedible or indigestion, and then we're taking them and kind of mixing and matching and putting them together to make new words that basically mean like you can do something or you can't do something, that kind of thing. And if you can learn them in groups, you learn them together, like inedible, indigestion, inactive, indestructible, things like that. You can learn that in means the opposite of what I'm doing here. And instead of learning the definition of that, you can kind of give your mind or give your brain a sense of what the meaning of that word is. So anytime you're listening to these, listen carefully for the patterns in the prefixes and the suffixes that we're using. So the prefix is the word that comes at the beginning of the sentence, and the suffix is the word that comes at the end, or the part of the word. So inedible. So inedible. So we've got able, which is kind of the suffix there. It's the last part of that, which means you can do something. And we're talking about eating. And then in means you can't do it. So inedible, inedible, inedible. So practice with the prefixes and suffixes and listen carefully to all these words as they appear in the conversation. Next, your daily intake. Daily intake. So again, we're going to take in, your intake. Often the diet that's recommended by the government or by doctors or whatever, they recommend a daily intake of, maybe 2 glasses of milk or 8 glasses of water or, whatever the food is, but they talk about what you should be eating. Again, we're using, it's just a bit kind of higher level vocabulary, but it means the same thing. So how much should you eat every day, or what's your daily intake? Your daily intake. So your daily intake of wine or your daily intake of bread or your daily intake of sugar should be so much. My daily intake of sugar should be 1 teaspoon. That's it. I should not have more sugar than that. Or I should have only 2 grams of meat, or 10 pounds of meat, whatever that is. Your daily intake. Daily intake. Next, health nut. A health nut. Now to be nuts, again, and you'll hear this again in the Fluency Corner lesson, but to be nuts about something means you're a big fan of that thing, or it's almost like you're so crazy about it that you can't think about it rationally. You can't think about it in a smart, logical way. So if I am a sports nut, then I really love my local sports team and I'm always cheering for them and I watch every game. And if I am a health nut, it means that I'm serious about health and I'm always learning about new things. What's the latest diet? What's the latest way to get healthy? So I am a health nut. A health nut. You'll hear this in the conversation again. Health nut. Health nut. Are you a health nut? Are you a sports nut? Next, we've got extract and extract. 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 Now this is weird. Let's get into this a little bit because you will hear this frequently in English where we're talking about the verb form of something and the noun form of that same thing. So with extract, we're going to talk about vanilla, which I talked about in the lesson. And I actually learned I had made a mistake, which you'll see in the video because I make mistakes all the time. I thought vanilla was coming from the bark of a tree, but that was cinnamon, which I also had remembered, but I kind of forgot too. So you'll see me make a mistake. It's pretty funny actually in the lesson. But to extract something means to take out a part of something, like you could extract my blood, or you could extract gold from the ground. It doesn't mean that you like suck it out, but it just means to take something from one thing and move it to another one. So usually you're leaving the rest of the dirt there in a gold mine and you're extracting the gold. But the noun form becomes extract, extract, extract. So we talk about vanilla extract, vanilla extract, vanilla extract. So we want to extract the vanilla, or we want to extract the vanilla from the bean that it's in, or we want to extract the gold. So let's extract the gold. But once we have the vanilla, we want to make vanilla extract, vanilla extract. Now this is something you have to watch the conversation so you can see how we do this naturally to listen to, oh, you can make vanilla extract, vanilla extract. Now this isn't something that's really particular that you really have to worry about. Most people will understand from the context of the situation. So if you're talking about vanilla extract, then people understand they mean like the bottle of liquid where you've got kind of vanilla flavor in it. So that's vanilla extract. Or if you want to extract some gold, people will understand what you're talking about as well. And that's why the context of the sentence is very important, or the context of the conversation. Next, salinity, salinity. When I'm pronouncing it fast, salinity, even though again we have that T sound, salinity becomes salinity when we're pronouncing it quickly. What's the salinity of the ocean? The salinity. The salinity of something just means the amount of salt in it, the salinity, salt content. So there's really nothing amazing about the word. It's just the more scientific way to talk about what percent of salt or the salt content of something. And so when we're talking about the actual rocks of salt, which you can see in the conversation, we're talking about the different levels or the different amounts of salinity. Salinity. Listen for this word in the conversation, salinity. Next, a nice, easy, fun word that you will see a lot of in casual conversations is raw. Raw. There is a kind of popular movement now about eating more raw food, so uncooked food, and the reason this is because a lot of the nutrients are destroyed or removed from food when they're cooked. Now some things, actually the food becomes better for you when you cook it. Again, I'm not a chef, I don't know specifically, but I've heard both of these things. And the raw thing, it's just you could be eating anything like raw fish or especially raw vegetables, so instead of cooking things or boiling them, you just eat the raw vegetable. I actually like to eat lots of raw vegetables. I like salads, and a lot of people in Japan make fun of me because I like to eat raw carrots. So they say I look like a rabbit. Hey, that's okay. I look like a rabbit, maybe. But I like to eat raw carrots. But there's some things that you should stay away from, like raw eggs. Maybe some raw eggs can be good in some places. I know in Japan I've actually had raw eggs, but I recommend you don't try raw chicken. Now that actually, that was really awful for my body. I actually talked about that in a lesson where I went to Japan recently, but I talked about eating raw chicken, and I do not recommend you eat raw chicken. It will definitely, or it could potentially be quite bad for your body. Raw. Raw. Our next word is unadulterated. I really love this word, unadulterated. This is a really classy, advanced way of saying that you haven't put any chemicals or any bad things into something. To adulterate something means to put like a poison into it, or a bad thing, a chemical, or to even just mix it and make it not pure anymore. So unadulterated honey means there are no processed foods or sugars or anything added to the honey. It is pure. So it's just a, again, more advanced way of saying pure or fresh or natural. So that is just kind of the normal food. It's unadulterated. And if you adulterate something, you add something to reduce the purity of it. So you could have unadulterated food, which is usually what we talk about it. And again, it doesn't mean it's necessarily poisonous or bad for you. It just means you're lowering the purity level of that. Adulterated or unadulterated. I like to eat unadulterated honey. I like to eat unadulterated honey. Now we'll get into some of the longer phrases that appear, and we'll make a few sentences and go over their pronunciation. Here we go. The first one is my mistake. My mistake. This is a very casual, very clear and easy way to say, oops, I've made a mistake. So in the conversation when I'm talking about, I thought I was being smart, that show I knew that vanilla came from the bark of a tree, but it actually doesn't come from the bark of a tree. And I'm a little bit stupid, I guess, maybe, because I was even talking about vanilla beans. So if it's a bean, it comes from the bean of the tree and not the bark of the tree, but we all make mistakes. So instead of a longer thing about I'm sorry, I made a mistake, which is kind of a longer thing to remember, and it's a bit more just kind of not so natural to say, you can just say, my mistake, my mistake. And usually my mistake is for something that's a casual thing. It's not such a big problem. Now, if I have a bad car accident, I would not say, my mistake. I mean, that's a serious problem, so we wouldn't use my mistake. But in the conversation, I'm using my mistake because it's just not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter if vanilla comes from the bark of a tree or if it comes from the bean of a tree. So, my mistake. So, my mistake for introducing it the wrong way. But it's a great example of a nice phrase you can use when you do make a pretty kind of nice, not such an important mistake. My mistake. My mistake. Next, in the same boat. In the same boat. To be in the same boat with someone just means that you have the same situation as them, or you are doing the same thing that they are. And more importantly, whatever happens to them will happen to you also. So usually to be in the same boat with someone means if they are having a problem, you are having a problem as well. So right now you and I could be in the same boat if we are both working for the same company and maybe the company is not doing so well. So, you know, people are talking about like losing their job, or they're talking about the company being bought by another company. And so we are both worried, and we are connected because we are both in the same boat. We're in the same boat on this one. We're in the same boat. So you and other people that are learning English are in the same boat. You can also be learning things or doing things where you're connected to the other people. So to be in the same boat just means you're experiencing the same thing in the same way. And usually if one thing that's good happens or bad happens, that same thing will happen to the other person as well, because you are in the same boat. So if the boat sinks, you both sink. If the boat does well, if the boat goes higher or makes it to wherever it's going, then you both get there. In the same boat. In the same boat. Next, treat it like. Treat it like. To treat something in a certain way means to think about it or use it in a certain way. You'll often hear young children that are maybe teenagers that are saying, don't treat me like a kid. Don't treat me like a kid. So they are at that age, maybe 12, 13 years old, where they are starting to become an adult, and they are saying, well, don't treat me like a kid. So that means don't think of me like a kid and behave with me as if I were a kid. You can also talk about treat my home like it was your home. So treat my home as if it were your home. So treat it like family, or treat it like it's your own home. So to treat something like something else just means to think about it in a certain way or use it in a certain way. You can treat this lesson like a conversation. You can treat this lesson like a conversation. And that just means that it may not be an actual conversation, but you can think about it as if it were a real conversation, or like we are having a real conversation and we can talk to each other. So treat it like family, treat it like your home, treat it like a kid, treat it like a conversation. It's just the same thing as saying it's compared to this thing, so use it like this, or think about it like this. Next, when native speakers are cooking, we often talk about the comparison or the ratio of ingredients. And we don't say 2 cups sugar, 1 cup flour, because that's only for a certain number of ingredients. Let's say I'm having a recipe for cookies, and it says 1 cup sugar, 1 cup flour. So what I'm really doing, if I want to make a really, really big recipe, is 1 part sugar, 1 part flour. This means if I have 4 cups of sugar, I have 4 cups of flour as well. So if you want to talk about a specific recipe, you can talk about the actual ingredient amount, like 2 eggs or 3 cups of milk. But if you want to talk about just the ratio or the comparison of things, so you want to make a really big recipe, we can just say 3 parts water, 1 part flour. Or 2 parts milk, 1 part sugar. So that just means however much we use, that we should have that same kind of ratio of ingredients. So 2 parts milk, 1 part flour. 2 parts cream, 1 part flour. You can also talk about equal parts. So if you've got 1 part egg, 1 part milk, you can say we've got equal parts egg and milk in this recipe. Equal parts egg and milk in this recipe. And finally, our last 2 phrases for this fun phrase builder lesson, and these are not one bit and for the most part. For the most part. So let's look at them individually. Not one bit is just another casual way of saying not at all. I don't like cookies 1 bit. Not 1 bit. That's not true, actually. If you have some cookies, please send them to my home, because I do love cookies a lot. But usually, you know, little kids are talking about, I don't like spinach 1 bit. I don't like spinach 1 bit, not 1 bit. So not even a small amount, not even 1 bit. That's how much I don't like spinach. So not 1 bit. And the other one is for the most part. And this is a regular kind of phrase way of saying usually. For the most part, I come home after work and I do some studying, and then maybe I go to the gym. So that's my regular schedule, for the most part. For the most part. Usually, I come home and I read the newspaper after work. For the most part, I come home and read the newspaper after work. For the most part. For the most part, this lesson should be pretty easy to understand, but maybe some things are a little bit tricky and you have to kind of review them and maybe search things online. And again, I don't want to give you everything. I want to give you a way, for the most part, that you can understand things and then actually want to go out and learn more about them. So your education depends on you. I am helping you learn, and hopefully I am guiding you to become a better English speaker. But for the most part, the way that you become fluent, all of that, it's on you. So it's up to you to become a great speaker. Well, I hope for the most part this has been a really interesting lesson, and that you will, love every bit, and that you will not hate one bit of this lesson. Well, I hope it's been a fantastic lesson for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the Fluency Corner lesson and the Masterclass lesson this month as well. Go back and review all of these words and phrases and really practice using them in your conversations. That's how you get better. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next lessons. Bye-bye. Excellent work. You just increased your native spoken English vocabulary, improved your pronunciation, and have become a bit more fluent with one piece of a complete English fluency training system that's helping thousands of English learners all over the world become confident English speakers. If you enjoyed this lesson and would like to develop all of the habits required to speak fluently, click on the button in this video or in the link in the description below this video to learn more about a very special offer on our powerful English fluency training video course, Master English Conversation 2.0. Master English Conversation 2.0 was designed by learners for learners with everything you need to finally master even complicated grammar points without confusing grammar tables or boring drills, so you can use grammar without hesitation when you speak. Understand everything native speakers say and build a vocabulary of real conversational words and expressions to start speaking naturally and correctly. Improve your pronunciation and sound like a native speaker. Develop the habit of speaking and responding spontaneously in real situations. Remember what you study easily and develop the mind of a native speaker. Overcome shyness, meet native English speakers online and in the real world to practice speaking with, and build speaking confidence. Click on the button in this video or in the description below this video to begin getting fluent the simple, easy way, just like native speakers, with a 100% guaranteed English conversation and fluency course, including 5 valuable exclusive bonuses to help you get fluent even faster, available now for over 60% off. You can begin learning immediately, today, with this fully downloadable program and start experiencing immediate improvement in your understanding, speaking, and fluency. Even if you don't live in an English-speaking country, no matter how old you are, and even if you've struggled to get fluent in the past. Click on the button in this video now to get started. I look forward to seeing you in Master English Conversation 2.0.